got these people taking the same thing that they did, and we're not going to let it happen. First Nations are the original people of territory commonly known as Canada. Our rights to self-determination encompasses land, water, resources rights. Our rights to sustain ourselves and thrive from the lands and the waters precede Canada and the United Nations itself. Nevertheless, our inherent rights as people and nations have been affirmed by Canada and the United Nations. Our inherent rights as the first peoples and the nations of this land to sustain ourselves and to prosper from our traditional lands, waters, and territories encompass virtually all of Canada's apart from the Inuit territories. Bill C-53 is not compliant with S-35 of the Constitution Act 1982 or nor the UN Declaration of Rights of Indigenous People of Canada, international treaties with the First Nation. If Bill 53 is passed, would violate the First Nations right under the Constitution, under the international law. It would be grave injustice for Canada to enact on this bill and violate our collective rights while simultaneously failing to respect First Nations' inherent sovereignty and jurisdictions which precede and supersede all others. There are many objectionable aspects to this bill, starting with objective purpose, which is to sustain the rights to First Nations and those claiming the Métis identity. And let us remember that Métis would never exist without First Nations in the first place. Section 7 of Bill C-52 makes it clear by subjecting all First Nations rights affirmed by legislation, including those in the Federal UN Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples of Bill C-53. But make no mistake, Section 7 is not only a problem with this bill. We wish actual Métis people no ill. However, there are certain facts of life. Métis rights, even those who are true Métis, cannot supersede the rights of First Nation. Any claim to lands or self-government in relations to lands, waters, or resources in Canada made by anyone claiming Métis identity are necessarily superseded by the rights of First Nations who have inherited rights literally dating to the time immemorial, meaning First Nations rights to land, water, resources, and old as humans' memory and existence in this territory and precedes the history of all other people. There is another development problem that must be addressed. That is, increasing number of fraudulent claims to nationhood and Métis identity in different parts of Canada. There are pretendians who claim to be Métis and Indigenous identity is fraudulent. That is not grounded in any proper sense or what people or nations is. There are individuals likewise claiming the collective identity and rights that are not to claim. Membership in the nations is not established by genealogy or DNA test and finding one Indigenous ancestor. 8 generations back, a Canadian with a grandmother who was French citizen generation back cannot go to France and claim French citizenship. This is not how the nationhood works. Phony so-called Métis claim are rising in BC, Ontario, Quebec, and other places in Canada, addition to individual pretendians and pretend Métis. This is not a problem the Crown can ignore any longer, and Bill C-53 will absolutely aggravate the problem while violating an undetermined First Nations collective rights and title. First Nations fought hard over the entire history of Canada to secure affirmation and protection to our collective rights and title as people and nations in Canada and internationally. We will not stand by while tries to undetermine and take away those rights for their own benefits without our consent. We do not consent to Bill C-53. We will fight and we will respect. We will fight and we will accept all Parliament's support to us in this position. Right now in Manitoba, we're dealing with the same problem. We have lands that are TLE selection that we claim, and the Métis are holding on to our lands, that now they want us to go to the Metis and ask them for permission to use our own lands, which is absolutely not right. I will never go to the Metis and ask them for a piece of land. And I stand here today in front of all our First Nations people to stick with each other right across Canada. Because this is for us. But a lot of us are getting older. We're not going to be here. We're going to be in the spirit world, but we're going to have our children, our grandchildren, 7 generations from now. And we got to make aware that we have this land, it's their land. We got to understand that to help each other. I'd like to thank all you for listening to me. And I love the city of Ottawa. It's a beautiful year. You guys got a nice territory. And I love you guys all. Thank you. Miigwech.
I'd like to call upon Elder Claudette Commanda from Kittigan-Zibi to say a few words for us, please. Elder.
Kwe kakina. Kwe kina wiya. Kwe nishnabeg. Miigwech ki bija yego ma nongum. Bija ko ma nishnabe ki o mama wenene wag. Kani mich ki jigun ki nu nedishna kas kitagan zibi donjaban. My English name is Claudette Commanda, and I am a proud Algonquin woman from the Kittigan-Zibi and Nishnabeg Algonquin First Nation. And I welcome each and every one of you, my brothers and sisters from the various nations. Welcome to this beautiful homeland, the unsurrendered, unceded homeland of the Algonquin people. Kichimigwech Mishomis Barney Migwet Jonji. And thank you to our elder for that beautiful prayer that he gave, to the drum for singing that beautiful song, and to the Eagle staff carriers, Chimigwech, to all the grandmothers and the grandfathers, mothers and fathers, the children, everyone who is here, the aunties and uncles. We honor the Creator. We give thanks to the Creator. I also want to acknowledge the ancestors. Our ancestors are here. And they have been here with us since time immemorial in the same way that all our lands as First People of Turtle Island have been here since time immemorial. And no one has the right to take our lands. No one, no government, no title of a government has the right to take our lands. No government has the right to define identity. No government has the right to say nation-to-nation reconciliation without having the First Peoples at the table, and we give our voice. We have been fighting this fight for the last 530 years, and it's a crying shame that we always have to come here to basically beg and plead for our rights. It's common sense that when you go into someone's country, you acknowledge and you respect the people of the land, right? We need to teach this government and all governments, apply common sense first and foremost. Do not call yourself a government, and do not say that reconciliation with Indigenous peoples is the most important thing for the government when you don't even have the rightful owners of the land at the table. The Creator gave us our laws. O Gitchi Dad the Wage Gay Win, that first law, the first rights comes from the Creator. And we have held on to those rights. And the government of Canada made those laws that forced a fiduciary obligation onto the federal government. And they owe us that fiduciary obligation. They owe us. And we cannot let them walk away. And I remember the days of our past leaders. And that's what they always said. Hold on tightly to our rights. Hold on tightly to our history, pre-contact history. and the history of colonial history and Canadian history to remind the federal government, to remind all governments, and to remind Canada, and to remind the world at large whose land this is. It will always be our land. As Algonquin people, we welcome you, brothers and sisters, to this homeland here at Parliament Hill. We welcome you. And we acknowledge and we respect all your homelands. And we stand together as the first peoples of what is called Turtle Island. We stand together. And I remember the day when my grandfather, the late William Commanda, had said, we must all stand together as the first peoples as a nation. When one falls, we all fall. When one cries, we all cry. When one succeeds, we all succeed. Let us hold so close and dear to all those voices of our past leaders that ensured that we would be here today. Let us ask our ancestors for that guidance. Let us keep praying and let us continue raising our voice and let no one silence your voice. And if we have to keep marching up here, we're gonna keep marching up here, because at the end of the day, it's for our children. Without land, we are not people. Without people, we have no future, and our children belong here to this land. So kill the bill on the hill. Kill the bill on the hill. Kill the bill on the hill. No to Bill C-53. And I say no to the bills of 530 years. But let us keep marching together. Let us keep holding up one another. Let us keep our voices strong. And please, please, to all the Canadians out there that are listening, you need to thank First Nations people for where you are today. And you need to stand with us when we stand to fight for our rights. So Canadians, you too have a fiduciary obligation to First Nations people. Because we First Peoples, we have been here since time immemorial, and we are here today, and we are always going to be here forever. And we are going to hold on very tightly to our land. Do you hear that, the federal government? Do you hear that, provincial governments? You do not have the right to make identity. You do not have the right to make laws that impact our people and our land. This is our land right across Turtle Island. And just let us teach them that strong message. Do not silence your voice. Let us continue one more time to say, kill the bill on the hill. And to all the politicians as well as the members of Senate, they too have a responsibility to hear our voices, to hear the voices of all the nations. This is our land, it is our rights, it is our future, and it is our survival. And thank you to all of you, each and every one of you, Nitschkiwedog and Ashnabig, Miigwech, Kizagi, and I love you all, and let's do this together. Kill the bill on the hill. Miigwech!
Thank you very much, Elder. Wow, wise words. Chief White Duck, please. Chief Dylan White Duck, please.
Koi kakana, minogijagad, Ogama Wabashashib, Nandijnakas, Kitigan Zibi, Anishinabeg, and Donjaba. It's very difficult to speak after Claudia Kamada. She's very inspirational. A well-respected elder from Kitigan Zibi, Anishinabeg. First and foremost, I want to acknowledge the drum here this afternoon, who put us in a good path. The elder, Metis, who opened us up with those kind words. Our national chief, Joanna Bernard, who spoke a while ago as well. and all the many great speakers. I see many chiefs in the crowd here today. It's great to see you all here on our lands. It's good to see everyone here supporting this this cause against this bill. Personally, myself, you're probably wondering why a Quebec chief is speaking here on the Hill today in support of the Chiefs of Ontario. Personally and respectfully, we don't have no boundary. The Algonquin people, there's never been a border of Ontario and Quebec. We've never respected that. So our rights in Quebec are being infringed. The First Nations, the chiefs in Quebec are being infringed upon. That in itself is so wrong what's happened. It's another process of land being taken from us and our rights being stolen from us, and this has to stop at once. Let's all work together and stop this friggin' bill here. Come on, let's do this. We have it in our rights here. Our rights are being impacted. Totally being impacted. You know, there's not many different governments that are accountable for this. But we have to recognize two that are working very adamantly to make this happen. It's the Liberals and the NDPs who want to see this happen. Now, why is Jagmeet Singh, the leader of the NDP, supporting this bill so much? He's supposed to be our goddamn ally. Why is he supporting this so much? He has to be accountable. I want to hear all the leaders of every party speak on this matter to make sure their voices are heard and why they're standing behind this bill. This has to be stopped, and I feel bad, really bad for citizens of Ontario, because your tax dollars are going to be paying for this other group, the Metis Nation, and you have to be cautious about this because you don't want your tax dollars, your hard-earned money, to be paid to this new organization. This has to stop. So Canadians and Ontarians are going to be the one holding the bill. Metaphorically speaking, they're going to be the ones paying for this. This has to stop at once. And once again, I'm very vocal. I've been vocal about this bill at the last assembly of the Chiefs Assembly. And I'm not racist. I'm not being against. We support the homelands. We support their territory out in Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and Alberta. We support their homelands. But you don't see First Nations like us here in Quebec and Ontario go assert ourselves on their homelands. I had this quick discussion with Chief McLeod. We don't impose ourselves over there. What they're doing is imposing their rights on our lands too. These are our homelands, all of this province. They're taking it they're just stealing it. So this has to stop. Personally, and I said this once again, and I'm not a racist, but there's only two things I like about the province of Quebec. Number one, we have cheap electricity rates. And number two, they don't respect and they don't listen and they don't adhere to Métis rights. That's it. Thank you for everyone for coming here today. And I welcome you to our unceded, unsurrendered, title territory lands that we are filing title on. This land that you're on here right now, and LeBreton Flats, that is still our lands and our territory. So miigwech for coming, and welcome to our unceded, unsurrendered territory. Miigwech, and thank you.
Next, I'd like to call upon Algonquin Anishinaabe Tribal Council Chief Savannah McGregor.
Kwekakana, Pijashig. Hello, everybody. Welcome. I'm Savannah McGregor, Grand Chief of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation Tribal Council. Thank you for inviting me here to uphold and speak about our Indigenous inherent rights as sovereign nation of Anishinaabe Algonquin people and to ensure our voices are heard. I stand upon our traditional territory of our nation, of which we have been stewards of since time immemorial. Our Anishinaabe culture, language, sustenance, and traditional governance laws arise out of our lands and continue to do so. As First Nations peoples, our identity is inextricably linked to our land. Our traditional territory has never been surrendered, nor our inherent rights extinguished, as some may believe. The United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples upholds our inherent rights and title to our lands. A critical part of the declaration, pertinent to the issues we are addressing here today, is the recognition that First Nations people must not be forcibly removed from their lands without their free, prior, and informed consent, but rather, we as First Nations peoples have inherent rights by virtue of our existence from time immemorial to the lands and natural resources, including to own, live on, and use the land. Secondly, the Declaration outlines that we as First Nations peoples, not the government, have the right to determine our own membership based on our own laws of governance and citizenship as a nation. In direct violation of these rights is the existence of the Algonquins of Ontario for my nation and the MNO for you, my brothers and sisters. And they also affect us further north within our Anishinaabe territory. The AOO was created by the province of Ontario to support the settlement of the Algonquins of Ontario land claim. Not dissimilar to the MNO, the AOO is an Ontario corporation, recognized by the Ontario and federal government as well as municipalities. They declare they represent 16 negotiated representatives, and they talk about the 84 municipal jurisdiction and 9 upper tier counties they must work with. What about the Algonquin Nation, the people who have lived on the territory since time immemorial and are still here? We, the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation, the true rights holders to our land, do not recognize the AOO as representing our nation, nor do we recognize them as legitimate representatives of the constitutionally held rights of the Algonquin Anishinaabe. The membership of this group is questionable, with nearly 3,000 members recently removed from the AOO membership due to claims to a distant ancestor whose Algonquin ancestry has now been proven erroneous. Does this sound familiar? How can the government rightfully say that they are negotiating with the Algonquin Nation when the majority of its members have questionable Indigenous ancestry or are just plain non-First Nations, pretendians? It brings into question the legitimacy of the whole land claims process. Why are these facts not acknowledged? And what kind of government in this day and age has to set out this process to negotiate the taking of Algonquin territories with an organization that does not legitimately represent the nation, but who lay claim to identity and the territory? The only legitimacy given to the AOO is from all 3 levels of government, and as such, we should not be in a position to negotiate on behalf of our nation, who do not recognize them. It is a direct colonial violation of our inherent rights of sovereignty over our lands and identity. What Tamagami First Nations has noted in the press release regarding the MNO is also very relevant to the AOO as well. It is stated that MNO is riding on the tails of colonial law to assert false claims to the land rights and manufactured Indigenous identity with the backing of Ontario and Canada. It is negligent to only negotiate with groups of Ontario on our traditional territories. There is historical evidence that we are the first peoples of our traditional territories. It is not ethical and does not reflect the spirit of truth and reconciliation. To artificially exclude Quebec Algonquins is wrong. It is not in the spirit of truth. Miigwech.
Kwe Lisa Nadishnikas, Mongdodam, Megan Sagagan, Nadojba. Chief Lisa Robinson from Wolf Lake First Nation. I am also the Grand Chief of the Algonquin Nation Secretariat, and I stand here today with Savannah McGregor, indicating our opposition to, in support and standing with all of our other nations and brothers and sisters here in opposition to Bill C-53. Canada, let's go back 500 years ago when we welcomed your people to our territories and our lands. We helped you. We provided you with health, security. And today, let's fast forward to 2023. Our people do not have health, do not have security. Instead, what we have is a lot of historical wrongdoings and grievances that our people have, our nations. And Canada, you need to fix those before you create any other recognition or assertions or allow any of these things as an attack on our people and our territories and our lands and our water. Canada, you need to reconcile with the First Nations first. First Nations first! Miigwech.
Thank you, Chief. Chief Sarrazin. Chief Sarrazin, please.
Miigwech, thank you. Kwekwe, Pajashin, hello and welcome. My name is Greg Sarrazin, and I am the Chief of the Algonquin-Pequawkanagon First Nation. I've been asked to provide the territorial welcome here today as we continue to undertake our work protecting our First Nations' inherent rights, and I'm happy to do so. The land we are now on, this building behind us, the Parliament buildings which house the Government of Canada, the Supreme Court of Canada, which is just down the street, and in fact this entire city resides on unceded, unsurrendered Algonquin land. When European cultures first came up the Ottawa River, which we call the Kitchissippi River, into our Algonquin homelands in the early 1600s, we were here, occupying and defending our homelands where we have been since time immemorial. The Algonquin Nation was here. There was no MNO. We are still here today in 2023 and will continue to be here for the next 7 generations and beyond. I'd like to pause for a moment and acknowledge all of our First Nation residential school victims, like my childhood friend, my uncle Joey Commanda, who never made it home. I want to also acknowledge those residential school survivors who did make it home, like Joey's brother Rocky and all the others who did not make it home and whose lives were forever changed by that terrible experience. I acknowledge our missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls and the work being undertaken to address that terrible legacy and to put an end to it. I also want to acknowledge all of the 60s scoop survivors who were taken from their cradle and denied their culture and their heritage and their people. I want to acknowledge our Algonquin brothers and sisters whose First Nations are north of the Ottawa River, which we call the Kitchissippi. And I want to acknowledge our Algonquins and Pequawkanagon members, some who have bused here today, and some who live here in Ottawa and make Ottawa your home. Ottawa may be your home, but Pequawkanagon is your home as well. I want to acknowledge all First Nations across Turtle Island and all of the First Nations who are represented here today. And I want to acknowledge all of you here who have come out to help us to fight, to protect and sustain our Algonquin rights. I wish to acknowledge our Algonquin ancestors and all of your ancestors, all the way back to the beginning. It was our ancestors who practiced our rights and protected our rights in their time so that we could have our rights today, so that we can enjoy our rights as it should be. But now it's our turn. It's our turn to fight to protect our rights, because protecting our rights is also protecting our children's rights and the rights of our future generations. One day, we will all be ancestors. And I know that I want my descendants to know that I looked out for them and that I protected their rights. We need to kill Bill C-53. I've been involved in fighting for the recognition of Algonquin rights, for our First Nation rights, for close to 40 years. And I've seen a lot of things change in those 40 years. When in the early 90s, I was on the Hill, I was speaking here, we were protesting, we were drawing attention to the Algonquin land claim. We met with the government officials, we held roadblocks out at Algonquin Park. We did everything that we could to get our land claim started so that we could reclaim our territory for the Algonquin Nation. We began the negotiations finally in 1991 and 1992, but to get that land claim started, we had to prove that, number one, We were the Algonquin Nation. This was our traditional territory. We were here since the beginning, that we were still here now, and that we were here continuously since historic times. Bill C-53 flies in the face of that. There is a legal test that needs to be met by Metis communities. That legal test is similar to what we had to prove as Algonquins, that there was a historic communities here in a territory in historic times, and that it was here continuously through to modern times and is still here now. That test is not being met. There's no need for that test if Bill C-53 goes through. What will happen then is that there will be creating Section 35 Aboriginal rights for an organization which is a corporate organization that has no claim to those Aboriginal rights, and they have very lax identification criteria. While we've been in the negotiation process, we've been infiltrated by many people who should not have been there. We know our genealogy. We just removed thousands of people from the list of people who counted themselves as Algonquin. They are gone. They are off the list. The problem is with the MNO, those people simply have to go over there to the MNO office and self-identify as Aboriginal, and they become Metis. And then if Bill C-53 goes through, they will have legal rights then to hunt, to fish, to trap, to gather resources within our traditional territory. That flies in the face of the legal test. It flies in the face of the courts of Ontario and Canada. That can't happen. That is, the government of Canada should well be embarrassed by this bill. It doesn't even follow their own laws. Once again, I am very, very happy to welcome all of you here today to the traditional, unceded, unsurrendered Algonquin territory. I would like to thank you, miigwech, and if I leave you with these words, the words of respected Elder Claudette Commanda, kill Bill C-53. Miigwech. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief, and thank you to all the opening speakers and the generous welcome to the Algonquin territory here in Ottawa, the unceded land of the Algonquins. It's my turn to introduce myself. My name is Jason Metis. I'm from the Metis First Nation. This wonderful man beside me is my father, Barney, and my mother sitting across the way, my mother, Doreen. I'm so happy that they could join us today. Thank you. The best parents on the planet. I've been honored to be asked to MC this event today. It was our small community in Metatchewan that raised the warning flags for the chiefs and the communities in Ontario about this fraudulent Métis claims of membership of community in Ontario. It all started when I was forced to consult with Métis people about a land claim, a 100-year-old treaty land entitlement of my own community. I was a lead negotiator, and the province and the government of Canada made us ask the MNO if it was okay if Metatchewan First Nation added land to its reserve that it was entitled to for over 100 years. And you know what the Métis folks said to me? We're going to fight you. If you don't let us use your land, you're going to have a fight with the Métis Nation of Ontario. Well, I'm here to say the fight is on. There's no polite way to put this. There are no Métis communities where I'm from, and I can bet there's none where you're from either. Let them try and prove it. We've done the research. We know that they're stealing our identity. We know that they're stealing our kids. We know that they're claiming your aunties and uncles as their own. How can that possibly be? And the folks inside this building, They got their heads up their rears. They don't care. They're listening to the lobbyists. They're interested in votes. They're not paying attention to any of the facts, because the facts are, it's only the Cree, the Ojibwe, the Anishinaabe, and our nations that own this land. There's nobody else. So folks, I'm really, really excited and happy to share our story with you. And I want to let you know, first of all, that there's lunch available to you at the hospitality tent. And I have to give a shout out to our staff from the Chiefs of Ontario for arranging this entire event and making sure that our voices are heard. So grab a bite to eat. It's going to be a little bit of a lengthy afternoon. We've got some wonderful speakers that are going to tell you their own stories, and I'll be back to introduce them. But pay attention. This is serious. 40,000 Metis is my understanding by 2030. 40,000 of these fraudsters claiming your stuff. So without no further ado, my good friend and a mentor, a man I've come to respect and admire a lot, Chief Scott McLeod from Nipissing First Nation. Scott.
Anin kinawaya. Anin kinawaya. Haha, miigwech. Firstly, I'd like to say chimigwech to Chief Dylan White Duck for allowing us to come into his territory. And Chief White Duck, I just want to acknowledge that you've got a really kick-ass band office over here behind me. I'm not going to say a lot that's already been said, but there are a few things that I want to speak about with Bill C-53. I met with the minister, the new minister of Crown and Indigenous Relations yesterday, and he told me that it's not their position to tell them that they're not Indigenous. But I quickly pointed out to him that under the Indian Act, my grandchildren are losing their status. They're losing their recognition as Indigenous people. And, this government is so arrogant that it thinks that with one piece of legislation, it can extinguish real Indian people, and then with another piece of legislation, create new Indian people. And I think this is an attempt for them to have Indigenous people that they can govern more easily than the real Indigenous people, which is us. This bill has been done behind closed doors without proper, free, and prior consent with Indigenous people. The details of this bill is not being shared. They tell us not to worry, and that it's really none of our business because it's between them and the Métis. But we made it clear that it is our business because they are using our ancestors to get their foot in the door to claim these Indigenous rights in Section 35. And they are just handing it over to them without due diligence. We put, as Jason has spoke about, we've done the research that shows very fraudulent criteria that they're using to claim Indigenous status, Indigenous identity. And there's no due diligence on the part of Ontario or the federal government to make sure that who they are giving those rights to are in fact Indigenous people. And without the due diligence, Bill C-53 is simply a pretendian bill. That's all it is. I've said many times that we are not against the Métis people, and we acknowledge that Métis people have rights in their territories. But for so many years in our communities, in our language, our stories, our history has been shared from generation to generation. And not once in our nation and many nations that I talk to with other chiefs have we ever talked about historical Métis communities in our territories. This is a pure fabrication of the federal government and the provincial government. In our language, we do not have a word that describes Métis people. And that should tell you something. We do have a word that talks about mixed marriages. But mixed marriages happen all the time. They happen since contact. In fact, the research that Dr. Daryl LaRue and Dr. Celeste Pedri have done shows that up to 95% of French Canadians in Eastern Canada have some Indigenous person along their family history. And that is totally understandable. But that does not fulfill criteria of being a Métis person or being a nation or being a distinct culture. It just means you have Indigenous ancestry somewhere down your family line, and congratulations, but that doesn't make you Indigenous, nor does it make you Métis. By opening this up, the government is watering down our rights. They say that it's not about land and it's not about resources, but yet the Métis Nation of Ontario, the people there are occupying our land, they're harvesting our animals, they're taking funding away from our education, they're taking funding away from our housing, all money that is supposed to go to us. And they are taking it, they're occupying spaces in academia, they're occupying spaces in all types of institutions when they shouldn't be. If anybody in our territories have any Indigenous claim or rights in our territory, it is not up to Canada or Ontario to decide who that is. It's up to the nations of the territories. I just want to close by saying that I was a little surprised today and seeing all this commotion going over here, and I can't help myself but to send all my love and support to our LGBTQ community out there. We are with you. We support you. And we love you. Thank you, Miigwech.
Thank you, Chief McLeod. I just wanted to let you know that as of today, the Waban Tribal Council, our 6 small communities from Northern Ontario, are in the courts over this bill. We've invested thus far $400,000 of our own hard-earned money to fight this bill, and it needs to stop. The facts are the facts. There are no Métis communities where we're from. The people that are on their list are your people. Dr. LaRue spelled it out clearly. The people that they're claiming are former chiefs, former grand chiefs, and people from the nations from where we reside. We just did a deep dive into the executive of the Timmins Métis Council, and not one of them is from what they call the Abitibi homeland community that stretches from New Liskeard all the way to the James Bay coast. Not one of them can claim an ancestor that's from our area. It's just an example of the BS, that the fraudulent nature of the Métis Nation of Ontario's claim, and it needs to stop. Chief Wilford King, please.
Miigwech, Kima Ugima Nijnakas, Kiasaging Donji, Ogishkamin and Isi Mazene Dodem, Chimiigwech Kenawea. My name is Chief Wilfred King from the Gulbey First Nation, Northern Ontario, signatory to the Robinson Superior Treaty of 1850. I'm part of the group of First Nations representatives from Ontario that is opposing this legislation. For the last couple of days, we have met with various parliamentarians. This morning, we met with senators. We vehemently oppose this legislation, and this legislation must be killed. One of the key things that we hear from the parliamentarians, whether they be Conservative, Liberal, or NDP, is that the basis of this legislation, the pretext for this legislation, is based on a 2003 Supreme Court decision of R versus Pauley. And it's our contention and our position that this case has been misconstrued, misapplied, and it's not good law. This case talked about a historic Métis communities. Where I come from, in Nemagozagan, Lake Nipigon territory, there were no historic Métis communities. It was a Anishinaabe territory, and it is still that way it is today. That territory belongs to the Anishinaabe people of Northern Ontario. As I stated, I'm not taking away from any of the hard-fought rights that have been advanced by the Métis people or the leadership. Our issue here is the fraudulent claims made by the Métis Nation of Ontario. And I'm not going to reiterate what has been said already, but I can assure you that in our territory there were no historic Métis communities. And their assumption that R versus Pauley applies in our territory is wrong. And I support all of you here today that are with us, the previous speakers and the subsequent speakers, that we must fight this legislation, because as chief of my community and the territory I represent, we will not go down fighting, and we must kill this bill. Chimigwech.
Miigwech, Chief King. You know, what if we don't do anything? What if we just accept in our nature, right? It's our nature as Indigenous people, as First Nation people, to be so welcoming and open and just take people in like we did so many hundreds of years ago. And what if we just let this happen? What happens to your kids? And it's been said already. What happens to your stuff? What happens to your land? I know in our area, the moose population, it's already decimated by the white hunters. And we have Métis Nation of Ontario citizens who are fraudulently claiming access to that hunting right, diminishing the population still more. And now we have elders and children who are trying to continue the practice on the land that are unable to, because it's gone. The resources are gone. And we have to, that's a real-time example of why we need to kill this bill. We know in 2008, there were about 7,000 Métis Nation of Ontario members. Today, there are 23,000. And by our research, in 2026, 2027, it's estimated there'll be 40,000 Métis Nation of Ontario members, because they have a bus that flies around the province and stops at every mall. Give them $20, you can get a card. And that's not, I thought that was an urban legend. That is the truth. They have a membership bus that floats around in our province signing up folks. So pay attention. This bill needs to die. Former Chief Dean Sayers, please.
Ani Kinewea. Echo. Oh, that's cool. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Dean Sayers. I want to acknowledge Batchwana's new chief, Mark McCoy, out here. Let's give Mark a round of applause, and I wish you well, and along with our council in Batchwana. And I also wanted to acknowledge today this beautiful place we are, our beautiful lands, and acknowledge Claudette and her wonderful words and her ability to really get us motivated. That's so beautiful. I also want to thank the Algonquin leadership that are here, the chiefs that are here, and Barney. Miigwech Barney. Barney is one of our cherished elders that's so eloquent and so insightful. I wanted to share with you a little bit in what's been shared with me in our neck of the woods. I am Ojibwe. I'm from the Crane clan. More specifically, in our neck of the woods, we're the Blue Heron. And we have been as a people and as the leadership at the center of the Great Lakes, been in receipt of people from all around the world for a millennia, including our own relatives and neighboring nations throughout the Great Lakes and across Turtle Island. We've been the host. We've had ceremony. We've fed thousands of people like this from all around the Great Lakes. We became aware of relationship development through that time. And elders related to me a story, and I want to share with you that story. And I want to thank the elders for continuing to share those stories with us, because your stories will not turn up, on the most part, in the libraries and the schools and the universities to the degree that we need. We're working on that, but I wanted to share this one with you. They say that when we prepare to enter into the relationships with the different people from around the world that were arriving here, we made our way in our canoes. In particular, as an example, we made our way, and people from all the tribes in the area that wanted to be a part of these relationship developments made our way in these beautiful canoes, these birch bark canoes. And in those birch bark canoes were our land, our language, our law, our people, our spirituality. We also had in our canoes the moose, the deer, the fish, the trees, the water, all of those things we inherited from the Creator. So rich as a people, so rich that our canoes barely rode above the water. And we were really careful, but we trusted the birch bark to get us where we needed to go. Our journey was guided by spirit and ceremony. And when the people arrived in Baoting, in our village, in our area, they were accompanied by our beautiful feasts and ceremony, and we welcomed them, and we had our council fire. And even teachings about that council fire that come with our nationhood are still alive. There was also those tall ships, those other ships that came from around the world. And their boats were empty. That's what the elders told me. Those ships were empty. They rode really high on the water because they didn't have anything. Our leadership contemplated our people's wishes, and we decided that we would share with those people that came in those ships. And the elder told me, he said, guess what we had when we left the treaty making process? He said, we still have our land, our language, our law, our people, our spirituality. We still have our inherent gifts from the Creator. We still have our moose, our deer, our fish, the trees, the water, everything that we inherited from the Creator. We never gave 100% of our jurisdictions to the new people on our lands. That's what we have as an inheritance today, folks. We still have all of those jurisdictions. We helped those people that came to our lands who were starving, who didn't know how to live on these lands. We shared with them. We didn't give them everything. We gave them a little bit of access to resources. But guess what? Do they have jurisdiction to be looking after the moose today? Do they have jurisdiction to look after the water today? Do they have jurisdiction to look after law? Do they have jurisdiction to look after us? They don't have any of those jurisdictions. They have stolen those jurisdictions. They've assumed those jurisdictions. We gave them rights. We didn't give them rights to issue other rights to other people from around the world. We never gave them a right or an obligation, a role to play with regards to many things they're doing illegally. Now they're giving out rights to a special group of people that are our relatives. Much like all jurisdictions, we will reserve the right to contemplate the sharing of any jurisdiction on our lands. If you have an interest from wherever you come from, come to us and ask us if we would give consideration to your request. Don't go to Canada and Ontario and honor their illegal assumptions and assertion of jurisdiction. They do not have the right to give anybody jurisdiction. They do not have the right to give anybody anything that we didn't give them. We delegated rights to Canada. We delegated rights to the Crown. They didn't delegate anything to us. They came here with nothing. What they have is what we gave them. As a matter of fact, what the elders tell me is we don't have treaty rights. We had it all before they came, and we had it all after they arrived, and we had it all when we left treaty making. We gave them treaty rights. We didn't give them the right to give citizenship. We didn't give them any rights to look after and diminish our mother, the earth. That is still in our wheelhouse. So Canada, if you want to give rights to anybody, if you want to give rights to the Métis, our relatives, you will be breaking law, and you are breaking law. Those are not the laws that you agreed to conform to when you arrived here. So Canada, stop issuing things that you don't have. If you don't have a receipt to issue rights to the Métis, if you don't have a receipt to manage the moose, if you don't have a receipt to manage law from us, you are breaking the law.
Hey friends,
everything you have comes
thank
from
you
us.
for
We didn't give
tuning
you
into
the
the
right
stream,
that you're asserting today.
but the phone is
what
dying.
You are doing, Canada,
the battery's just about out, so I have to turn off the stream now.
And I encourage you.
But thank you very much for watching it. We really appreciate you watching the stream.
There's nothing wrong with you.
Thank you.
You're
Thank you.
okay.
Thank you.
We're original Anishinaabe.